We are going to master variants so we can create different color themes, light mode and dark mode version of each color theme, and making sure that the variants are responsive. We would use advanced techniques such as expose nested instances to update our variants properly. Also, we use text properties and auto layout to dynamically resize our elements as we type. We will explore the difference between the drop-down versions and the Boolean versions. This way we can create up to 44 variants and nest variants inside one another. Also, I'll be publishing this in the community page so you can grab your exercise copy for free. All of these are designed using variants, which means if you don't have access to the variables, which is a paid plan version, you can still design light mode and dark mode versions for free. Step 1. So the first step is for us to create a rectangle. We do that by just simply drawing a rectangle. We can give it the height of 12 pixels. Also, we would go to the fill section, click on the fill, and let's choose a purple color by giving it like 268 in terms of hue and 80% in terms of saturation and 60% in terms of lightness. So we created the first portion of our progress bar. Step 2. All we need to do is to duplicate that holding Option. And once we duplicate that, now we need to make this a bit lighter. Again, we would go on the fill. Instead of changing the hue saturation, we would go to the lightness and let's just change it to 90%. So right now we managed to create both of these. And the way it works is we do want this to grow and shrink, because this is how progress bars work. So how do we do that? We can also first rename this to bar. So this means that each of these are one single bar, that they get adjusted and resized accordingly. Step 3. What we need to do is we need to select both of them, Shift and A to create an auto layout, and rename this to bar by double clicking, and then rename this to bar chart. So what you notice is if I now click on my bar chart and I try to resize this, my bar charts, like the middle children elements, which are each bars, they are not resizing accordingly. Step 4. So in order for me to fix that, I have to go to the layer panels, making sure that I select both of the bars, and then on the right hand side here under the layout, we see that it is actually set to mix. And what we want, instead of actually being fixed, we would click on this and then making this fill. Under the layout panel, we have the ability to set this to fill. Again, if I try to remove this outside and duplicate this using Option, I can use quick action and then just write remove all auto layout. And by doing that, now if I click on my bar chart, you see under my layout, I no longer have the option. So that is why it is important to use auto layout, because now if I click on my bar chart up top, I don't have the ability to resize it, even though I can resize it with constraints. I even have a 5-minute video explaining the difference between constraints and auto layout on my YouTube channel. However, for this one, we're not going to explore the difference. We are going to use auto layout instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the first one and select the second one, which is an auto layout frame. Step 5. Since we already created an auto layout and we already selected these two bars and we set it as fill, if we go ahead and select the parent, as you can see, if we try to resize this, both of them are being resized proportionately. This is exactly the behavior that we want, which means if we decide to have this as 10% and we want to make it grow every 10%, we just need to duplicate that 9 times. Step 6. So the way it works is here I added 100, which is 100%. If we decide to have every 10% for this bar to grow, we just simply need to divide this by 10. So right now we have 2, which is 8. All we need to do is select the lighter bar, hold Command and D multiple times. And as you can see, every time I press Command and D, that tiny bar gets smaller and smaller, and the sizing is all dynamic. Step 7. You can use a plugin called Layer Counter to see how many bars you have. So here we can highlight them, Command / visit the plugins, and then search for Layer Counter. Here, I can click on the 3 dots, view the details. This is the Layer Counter plugin that I use. So I can simply run this. As you can see, it tells me that I have 8 bars. So all I need to do is basically select the light one 2 more times and then Command and D to duplicate that. Now I have in total 10. So if I highlight everything and select them, here we see that we have 10 selected layers. Step 8. And in order for you to select everything from your layer panel, what you can do is select the first child, hold Shift on your keyboard, and then go to your last element and then click while holding Shift. This way you can select everything. Or you can simply select your parent, press return on your keyboard, and then as you can see, as soon as I press return on my keyboard, I'm able to select everything. Shift and return, I would select the top one. Return, I would select everything that is the children, and then as soon as I select it, it tells me that I have 10 bars. So I'm already happy with that, so I would close that. Also delete that because I had that for my reference. Now I need to repeat that 10 more times, and each time I need to increase the bar 1 step at a time. So here, this is 10% bar, step 9. So the next one, I would again hold Option and drag this, and then I would just click here, click on this fill. I can use even the eyedrop to basically select that. If I close that, now we see that our progress bar is taking shape, which means that the first bar is 10%, the second bar is 20%. But before we do that, we need to actually create some styles. Step 10. This way, we no longer need to constantly go and click on the fill, adjust the colors. It is better to create reusable styles because we are trying to repeat that multiple times. Moreover, we also want to create dark mode and light mode. So if you don't have the Pro version, you're not able to create variables into different modes. Here we can create variables and simply add multiple modes. On the Pro version, you can only add up to 4 modes. However, on the free version, I believe that you can only add 1 mode, so we can't really leverage the dark and light mode if we decide to use variables. So we're going to delete that, and we're going to approach this with just creating styles, which you can do in a free plan. So first thing first is we need to go on the local styles. Here, if you click outside of the canvas, you would be able to see the local styles. So you have to make sure you unselect everything. And then as soon as you see the local styles, you just click on the plus and it tells you to basically select one of these options. So we would go with the color, and we have this pop-up appear. So it tells us to rename your color and give it a description, which is optional. All we have to do is go and click on this and then use the eyedrop tool here. As soon as we use the eyedrop tool, we would be able to pick that color, or simply we can select it from here because this is the only colors that we use in the document. So both ways work. I will use the eyedrop to select the color from the bar chart. And then as you can see, I'm filtering by the HSL, not the hex code. So make sure you go and filter by HSL because we rename our colors based on the lightness. So here we have 60% in terms of the lightness value. So we need to rename this to purple and then we give it a 60% lightness value. Step 11. However, if you actually rename this using a / like that, it would create a purple folder and it would place that 60% under that. So if we go ahead and do that and create that, right now you see we have a folder created called purple. And if I click on that tiny drop down, we have a color called 60%. So you can use that / if you decide to have multiple values. In this case, we do want to have multiple values if you want to create dark mode and light mode. That's why I used the /. So now since you have local styles created, you see that we have another tab called color styles. So now we can hover over the color styles and go and click the plus. And now we have again the same create new color style panel. We can click that, we can go and use the eyedrop, go ahead and pick the lightness value of the purple, which is 90%, click outside, rename this again to purple, all lowercase, again /, and the lightness value is 90%. So as soon as we do that and follow this naming convention, we can create the style, and as you can see, it automatically added the color under the purple folder. So it is case sensitive, so we have to make sure to exactly follow the same colors. So right now what we can do is we can click on our bar chart, scroll down all the way. Instead of actually having these colors being randomly selected, we can click on that 4 dots, and as you can see, we have our library selected, which means now we can filter between the colors that we select from. So the one that we want to select is 90% for the lighter value, and then we select again on the 4 dots and go ahead and select 60%. Now our selection colors is different. As soon as we click on the bar chart and now we open it, it actually is pointing to reusable styles that we created. What you can do is you can always click on that tiny circle icon, and as soon as you do that, it actually selects all the colors that use the same style. So now you know that which Figma design elements are linked to this reusable style. So moreover, if I click outside, the way you would create a folder is by right clicking on the color styles, and as you can see, a pop-up appears and it tells you to add a new folder. So here on the new folder, we would just need to rename this to light. So if we go ahead and rename this to light, we have again a light theme, and then we have again a folder called purple, because on the light theme you might have again multiple colors. You might have a light theme of blue, a light theme of purple, and as you can see, you can keep adding them under the light theme. Moreover, what you can do is now if you click on the bar chart and if you scroll all the way down, you see now it actually added another / for us, which is light / purple, and then / the percentage of the color. So again, down the line, if we ever decide to change this, we can simply come here, change this from the style, and if we decide to go with another color, it would automatically update everywhere for us. Since we fixed this colors, now we can do is collapse all the layers using Option and L, hold Option to duplicate that, and every time we duplicate this, we would just click on one of these, and instead of 90, we change it to 60%. And then as you can see, as we try to duplicate that, select that tiny one, instead of 90%, we select 60. You can see our progress bar is actually shaping from 10% to 20% all the way to 30%. So we would repeat that all the way to 100%. So what I would do is I would fast forward this. Step 12. As you can see, we created 10 bar charts, and each time we add a color, again, we started from 0% and then we added 10%, 20%, all the way to 100%. Not only that, since we use auto layout, if I now highlight all of them and try to resize them, they are being resized dynamically. So no matter the screen size, this is always going to represent 10%. If your screen size is bigger, it is going to represent 10%. Again, this is the power of using auto layout to create your elements. Right now, we have to create our variants. In order for us to create our variants, we need to have components first. Since we selected our bar charts, the first thing we have to do is to create multiple components. We can do that by navigating to that 3 tiny dots. Once you select all your elements, you can click on the more action, then create multiple components, or simply use / and search create multiple components, making sure not to select create components, because if you do that, it would create one giant component. You don't want that, so I'm going to Command Z that, again, / create multiple components, and as soon as I do that, I have 10 individual components created. As you can see, the master components, they have a different icon, which is a diamond icon with 4 tiny icons nested inside of them. Also, what you would notice is as soon as I have all of these selected as components, I have another option available for me, which is called combine as variants. This option is not going to be available for you if you don't have components created. Again, if I click outside, Command Z that, now I'm back at auto layout. You see the icons of auto layout is different than the master components. And as soon as I hover over all of them and select them, you see I have again frame, and I don't have the option to create all of these as variants. So it is really important to use, again, create multiple components. Step 13. Again, as soon as you do that, you see the icon is changed, and now I have the option to combine them as variants. And as soon as I click that and combine them as variants, you see that all of these components are now grouped under one master component, which is a bar chart component. Also, if I click on that tiny icon, you see now the icon of each variant is a bit different. It's actually a diamond, which is totally filled. That shows that this is one variant, which is nested inside a master component, which is called the bar chart. And what you notice is Figma gave them a default value at first. Also on the right hand side, as soon as I combine everything, Figma even gave me an error message that the properties are conflicting, so we have to resolve this issue. It is pretty to resolve this issue. As soon as you create your variants, all you have to do is give them each individual unique values, which means I would select the top one and I would just go under my default. Instead of having it as default, I would just click on that and give it 0%. Also, you can add anything under your value. Here, I just put 0. You can actually type in 0, or you can just have it as 0%. The values can be anything, so you can choose whatever that makes sense to you. But what you notice is we have, again, something called property. Figma also gave it a default value. We don't want that. So what we have to do is double click on the property and rename this to something that makes sense for our bar chart. So we would rename this to percentage. Now if I click outside and if I try to bring an instance out, the way you would bring an instance out, you have to hold Option on your keyboard, drag an instance out. Now if you take a look at the left hand side, we have again 3 different icons. An instance icon is a diamond, which is hollowed. A master component icon is an icon that is 4 hollowed diamond shapes, and a variant icon is an icon that is 1 diamond shape that is filled. So this is a very important way for you to tell a difference between an instance, a component, and a variant. So since we have our instance dragged out, you can see on the right hand side we have percentage, and we have again a value of 0%. What you notice is I don't have the option to filter between different values because I didn't really assign values to the rest of the variants. So all I have to do is go to my second variant, and instead of again having this as default, we would just write 10%, press return, and I would fast forward that because all I have to do is click on each of them and then increase it by 10%. So here the other one is 20%. What you do notice is as soon as we have replaced the default value, the layers also change on the left hand side. Here we have our bar chart. Even though that Figma gave them the default value, we renamed our variants here on the left hand side to 0%, 10%, and 20%, which means that if I now click on my instance again, we can tell that this is an instance by looking at it from the layer panel on the left hand side. Since I renamed 3 of my variants, if I click now, I have the ability to select between those 3. Here now I can go 10% and you see my bar chart is updating, and then I can go 20% and you see it's updating every single time that I select a value for my variants. Not only that, since we built this with auto layout, you see it is being responsive regardless of your screen size. So I would go ahead again, select all of these variants one by one and give them percentage value and fast forward. Step 14. Since I gave a value to all of my variants in my master component, if I take a look at the right hand side, the error is gone. So if you click on your master component, you see that you have a property called percentage, and you have again 11 different values. You can always click on that tiny icon to see the properties. And what you notice is it is being ordered from 0% to 70%, and the 100% is being placed on top, which is a bit awkward. So what you can do is click and drag this all the way to the bottom and release this. By doing that, you're organizing your variants in terms of the value, which means that if I close this and if I click on my instance, now if I click on my right side, you see now I have the ability to switch between different progress bar. Here I can go 80%, I can go now switch between 40%, and also I have the ability to resize them. Step 15. Another thing to keep in mind is we have this drop down. So if I go ahead and try to open it, you see the drop down is a bit larger. So this is one easy way for you to assign values as variants. If you don't want that, if you don't want to click on the drop down, and if you want each percentage to be turned into a toggle, you can actually create your variants in a different way. Instead of actually clicking on your bar chart and only giving it property, which is called percentage, you can break this down into 10 different properties and rename the properties as percentage values, which means that if I now click here, instead of actually having it a drop down, you would have all of these as toggles. So what I would do is I would just rename this to bar chart drop down, showcasing that this is one way for you to actually organize your variants. I'm going to click outside and try to drag this. Again, this is one of the bar charts that we organized as our variant. What you can do is hold Option on your keyboard, click and drag your master component, and now this one bar chart, instead of actually drop down, I would just now choose Boolean. So for us to basically see the difference, all I have to do is click on the master bar chart, which is Boolean, and go on the percentage and just click the minus. If you click the minus, and if we take a look at the left hand side, we see that everything is now being reset to default. However, if we click at the drop down version, you see that we already renamed all of these. So the way that the Boolean works, all we have to do is now, instead of going and selecting one property at a time and going and editing the value, we would create 11 different variant property. So let's just go ahead and do that. Here we would click on our bar chart, and as you can see, we have one default property 1. We can double click on that, and then we can rename this as 0%. And now all we need to do is go on that property. Again, here you see on the top side we have the word property. As soon as you hover over that, we have that plus tiny icon appearing. I actually resized this panel, so your panel might be different. So you can hover over that property and you would see that plus icon appearing. The reason I resized that because I want to explore that variant side. So as soon as you hover over that properties, you can now click plus and you have 4 options to choose from. I already explored all the different options in a 20-minute video on my YouTube channel called Component Properties. So if you're interested to learn about expose nested instances, you can also watch that video. Step 16. In this example, we are only going to explore the variant option because this is the only property we care about in this video. But if you're interested to learn more about the other options, make sure to watch that video. But for now, we would just basically click the variant, and then as you can see, Figma tells us to give it a property name. So here we would just give it 10%. We don't care about the value because we have to fix the value later on. So we would click create, and then as you can see right now we have 2 variant properties, which is again a 0% and a 10%. So I have to repeat that process 9 more times to create until 100%. And the process is hovering over the properties, clicking the plus, adding a variant, and then renaming the property again every time 10% up. Here we have now 20%. So I would go ahead and fast forward that. Step 17. And as you can see, we created 11 different variant properties all the way from 0% to 100%. However, if I click and drag one of these outside, I'm selecting an instance, which is the Boolean version. And on the right hand side, I don't have the option to basically select all of these. And also Figma tells me that there are conflicting properties. So how can we resolve that issue? Step 18. So the way we'd fix that is we need to give all of these a true and false value, which means that for the first one, which is 0%, we want to make sure that the 0% property instead of default is actually set to true. Again, it is really important to actually type it exactly this way as true, because if you don't type it that way, Figma is not going to create a toggle for you. So here, as soon as you add true to your first variant property and you click outside, and then if we go ahead and select the Boolean version, right now we see that our value has changed from default to true, but Figma really didn't pick up that version, which means it really didn't turn it into a Boolean toggle. So how can we achieve that and fix this instead of having it as default and true? We do want this to be a Boolean. All I have to do is now click on my master one and click on the first one, and then as you can see, the 0% is true, and all I need to do is give false for all the other properties, which means I only select the first variant and I only give it one true value, and all the other properties I will leave them as false. So if I go ahead and quickly rename all of these to false, this is how our variant looks like, which means that for the first one, which is 0%, we do want to make sure that the first one is set to true and all of these are set to false. And we have to repeat that all the way when it comes to the 10%. Here, as soon as I click 10%, you see everything is resetted back to default, which means now on the 10%, I have to give the 10% the true value and all of them a false value. And I have to repeat that for all of this. But as you can see, it is a bit of a time consuming process if I have to constantly click on the variant, give this true and reset everything to false, go back to the other one, only give the first one 0% a true, reset everything to false. Is there a way for us to actually bulk rename these? And the answer is yes. Step 19. So in order for us to speed up the process, all we have to do is select everything on on the variants. Again, if you select the entire thing, it would select the parent component, and we don't want that. So make sure to only select the nested variants, not the master component, because if you do that, you don't have the ability to rename your variants. So it is really important to only select the variants inside your master component. And by doing that, now I have the ability to bulk rename them. As you can see, all of these are set to default. Because I have selected all of them, I can actually go ahead and rename them one by one to false. This way the false value gets applied to all of them in a bulk way. So I have all of them selected, and I would go ahead and give this false one at a time to all of these. And by doing that, I make sure that all of the variant properties that I selected have the initial false value. Again, if you take a look at the left hand side here, you see that even the layer panel is being renamed. We don't care about the layer panel because it is not human readable. So what I would do is I would close that because we don't care about the layer panel. We do care about the actual variant panel. So now if I go ahead and select all of them, we know that all of them are now set to false. So all I have to do is select one of them, which is 0%, and only give true to only 0% variant property. Also, I have to pay attention that all the other ones need to be false. So I should not touch 10% all the way to 100%. I only need to change the 0%. And I have to make sure to rename it exactly like true, like that. So now we have to repeat the same process. We would just select the 10% and only rename the 10% to true, leave everything else to false. Same thing, we would just select the 20%, only go to the 20%, give this to true, and leave everything else as false. So I would go ahead and repeat that multiple times all the way to the 100%. And I would go ahead and fast forward. Step 20. Now if I go ahead and select the bar chart, now we see that our values, instead of being default, is exactly being renamed to false and true. And you have to make sure that exactly it is renamed this way for the Boolean variant to work, which means if I have to now compare the Boolean version of our variants to our drop-down version, you see a big difference. Even though they are built identical here, there is nothing changed. All we changed was the variant and how they're structured. And as you can see, the drop-down version, we have something called the percentage. And if we click that, we have the ability to filter. And then as you can see, our variants get updated. However, if I click on the Boolean, instead of having this as a drop-down, I have a very nice toggle to work with. Here, as soon as I click 60%, it actually updates to 60, 80%, 20%. And as you can see, this is so much easier to work with. If I click on the drop-down, you no longer have to click. And then you see it is a bit of a long drop-down, so you have to kind of scroll, select that. Both approach is correct. It always comes down to your preference on which one do you like more. Do you like the Boolean version, so you only click once and you see all the properties listed that way and you have everything as a toggle, or would you like to have everything as a drop down to filter between your variants that way? Step 21. Also, what I can do is, since we created both of them, I can simply select them, which is the master component, scroll down under the fill, just give it a background color so we see how it looks. Also the Boolean version, I'll go ahead and then add a background color so we exactly see how it looks. If your variant, again, if you click on the master component, and if your variant component frame is a bit awkward, what you can do is you can always click on that, scroll down, and under layout you have the ability to resize to fit, and by doing that you can actually resize them exactly the way you want. Step 22. What we need to do right now is actually add a text next to our progress bar and repeat that and stack that. So let's just go ahead and do that. In this example, I'm going to use the Boolean version because I like the Boolean version. I like the way it looks, and I have also the ability to switch and basically toggle between them. So I brought in my Boolean variants here, and then here we have again a clean layers to work with, so it's easier for us to understand how to nest variants. So what we need to do is we need to create another component out of this component and add a text next to it, which means that here we have again 20%. So all I have to do is add a text, which is again rename this to 20%, bringing it next to our bar chart and making sure again the sizing is exactly the same. Step 23. You can press K on your keyboard to bring the scale panel up, and this way you can click and drag the width. This way you would proportionately scale your text, and you can click outside, and right now we see that it is being rendered as 26 pixels. So here I would just add 26 pixels. I'll make sure that the letter spacing is 0. The height of it, instead of 180, we do also want this to be 26 pixels. It is using the primary color, so I would click here. Instead of actually randomly selecting a color, I have to make sure I click on that 4 dots and I select that purple from the library. Also, if I zoom in, here we see that it is still a bit bigger. So what we can do is, instead of 26, we can drop it down. So I went ahead and I reduced it to 18 pixels, also to 18 pixels from the line height and font size. So right now I would select both of them, which is the instance of our bar chart and the text that we created, and create another auto layout. Step 24. And then I can double click, rename this to progress. Also, we can reduce the gap to 16 pixels and zoom out. Now we see that we have our progress created. What we need to do is add a fill color. If I click plus, we do want to have a white background color added to this. But because we are trying to use dark version and light version, we have to make sure to add this color to our style guide. Step 25, which means, again, I'm going to click outside, go to the color styles that I have. Under the light, I would add again another color. As soon as you add plus, Figma already renamed this to light / for you. That means as soon as you add anything, it is going to be automatically placed under the light folder. And what we need to do is select white all the way. So we would just go ahead on the HSL, select white, and then here light, we can give it 100. But if we create the style here, you see that the 100 is being added on the light. So if you do want to have this under a folder, what you can do is again rename this. Instead of having this being 100%, you can add another / and then behind that / you can add background. And then if you close that, right now Figma automatically add that to another folder called background, which means that this is the purple color that we use for our bar charts and this is the background color. So all I have to do is now click on the progress. Instead of actually having the fill being a custom color, I would delete that and then I would hover over that 4 dots to apply the styles. And right now you see we have the option to select from the light background. So we would select that, and since this is an auto layout, we would just give it a bit of a padding. So we would hold command and click to select a padding from all directions, and let's just go ahead and give it 8 pixels in all directions. So if I click outside here, if I click on the master progress, if I try to make it larger or smaller, you see the progress bar is not working as expected. Step 26. So in order for us to fix this, we have to click on that progress, which is the bar chart Boolean. And as you can see, as soon as you click on that, we have all the properties to select from. But what we need to do is we need to always scroll down. Because we already created the Boolean as an auto layout, we now have the ability to go to the width and set that to fill. As soon as we set that to fill, if I click on the progress and if I try to resize this, it is actually being resized correctly. Also, if I zoom in here, you see that again the text is still a bit bigger. So I can reduce the text and also duplicate that another time because I do want to have a category placed next to the text. Because we have everything as auto layout, all I have to do is select the text, hold Command and D to duplicate, step 27, and click on the first one. And then here I would double click and then just write category. And for the category, I don't want this to be exactly the same color as the purple. I do want to use a text color. So what I can do is I can hover over the fill, detach the style, click on that and reduce this to basically 30% in terms of lightness. Also, I want to reduce this from 80% saturation all the way to 0. Also from hue all the way to 0. And the reason is I do want to select a grayscale color. Right now, if I click outside, I have a grayscale color and I have my percentage. And if I try to zoom out and try to make them responsive, you see only these bar chart is being responsive, which is exactly what we want. Also, we have to make sure to select both of these categories and then give them a bit of a lighter font, which is 14 pixels, so they are not that cluttered. Also, what you notice is if I try to double click on the category and as soon as I add some characters, you see the bar chart is being resized. You know, we don't want that behavior because what we need to do is down the line, our categories might be a bit different. So this way our bar chart is going to have a different size. We want to make sure the category and the percentage doesn't affect the actual size of the bar chart as we stack them. Step 28. So the way we would do that is we need to select both of these, which is category and the percentage, add another auto layout, which is Shift and A, and we would rename this to content. And then as you can see, by default, Figma gives it a hug value. We don't want that because we don't want this to grow as we type. We want this to be a fixed value. Here, we would just give it a fixed value and let's just go ahead and give it 150 in terms of pixels. Moreover, we do want this to be as close as possible to the bar chart because again, if I double click on the category and if I try to type, I don't want that behavior for the actual text to be hidden under the bar chart. So I'm going to Command Z that and I'll make sure that I select the parent content auto layout, go all the way to the actual spacing between the elements, and then I would click on the drop down. Instead of having it as 16, I would set it to auto. By doing that, you see the auto layout panel is actually now different, which means that it actually pushed all the available elements all the way to the end of it. So now if I click on the progress and if I try to resize this, it is being resized accordingly and our content is exactly fixed. So it's no longer having an effect on the total size of our bar chart. However, we haven't still fixed that issue. So if I double click on the category and if I start typing some letters, here you see it is still overlapping the percentage value. So we need to go ahead and fix that issue. Step 29. So if I just basically reduce this, let's say that this is the maximum amount of characters you want your categories to be. As soon as you start typing the maximum number of characters, Figma tells you that the total height is 106 pixels. So if you're happy with that, make sure to select that and then set it to 106 in terms of fixed value. By doing that, as soon as you type, you see now your actual progress bar is being responsive. So it's no longer going to overlap the percentage value. And if your category is very long or short, it is actually going to affect the entire progress bar height, which is exactly what we want. You also have to make sure that, again, if you click on your progress, it is set to hug. If your progress is set to fix in terms of height, if I double click and if I start typing, it's no longer going to work. So make sure that the progress, the parent one, is set to hug. This way, as soon as you start typing elements, it is going to be resized proportionately. Also, one last thing is here, I do notice that there is a bit of a space between the content on the left-hand side and the Boolean. So what you can do is you can click on the actual parent and click on that and reduce that to 4 pixels. By doing that, the percentage value is now closer to the progress. Also, what you do notice is our progress bar, this 20%, could have been added to the master component. So each time we go ahead and update that to 40%, the text here also gets updated. So what we can do is now modify the existing variant sets that we already created. This is a common example in real world. You always need to extend your variants, remove and add elements. So this is a great example for us to practice and go ahead and modify the existing variances that we just created. Step 30. So I'm going to go ahead and double click here and copy that to my clipboard and visit the component page. Here you see we have bar chart Boolean. In order for us to extend this, I don't want to touch that for now because I do want to keep this for your reference. What I need to do is just hold Option to drag one out, and then here on the layer side, we see that we have bar chart Boolean, which is exactly being set up correctly. So I need to do step 31, Command// and then search for detach instance. And as soon as I detach the instance, you see now we're back at auto layout. And as you can remember, the auto layout allowed us to resize our elements proportionately. Step 32. So all I have to do is right click, paste that text here and zoom in and select the parent bar chart Boolean and the text here. By doing that, I make sure I select the percentage and the bar chart Boolean. Now I would Shift and A to create another auto layout. I would leave that as 4. Also, I would rename this to bar chart with percentage. So if I go ahead and zoom out, if I try to resize this, now we are again facing the issue of the bar chart not being resized. Step 33. So what we can do is selecting the nested bar chart. Again, we would just rename this to the normal bar chart, and we'll make sure that we set that as fill as well. Also, we would select our parent bar chart with percentage, and we would make sure that it is set to fixed. So this way, as soon as we try to resize this, it is being resized proportionately, and we are at 0% at the moment, which means that all we have to do is basically remove that and leave it as 0%. Also, what you do notice is if I try to zoom in, again, if I try to start typing, it's going to affect the actual size of the bar chart. Step 34. We don't want that behavior. So what I would do is making sure I have enough characters, which is 100% is the maximum amount of characters that I need. And I do see that it is being set to 36 pixels. So here I would just go ahead and instead of having it as hug, I would set it at 36 pixels. By doing that, if I go ahead and try to add any more element, it's not going to have an effect. So here at the moment, I'll just go ahead and do 0%, and I'll make sure that this text is actually aligned to the right side. So I go to the typography section and I would align it to the right. So we are good to go. We managed to add a percentage value to our bar chart, and we made sure that our bar chart is being resized automatically. Step 35. So we need to repeat the same process that we did for the Boolean chart, also for the drop down chart. Each time we duplicate that, we need to add a purple color, and we need to now additionally update the percentage value. Also, what you notice is here we have an extra gap around our bar chart. If I zoom in a little bit more, here you see there is an extra gap that is being formed around our bar chart, and that is due to our text line height. Step 36. So in Figma, you have an option to go on the typography section, click on that type settings, and make sure to go to the vertical trim and trim that. As soon as you do that, now you see that there is no line height. Also, what you can do is also reduce the line height to 14 pixels. So this way, if I now zoom out and if I click on my bar chart, there is no extra space between them on top and bottom. These are just minor touches. So I can hold Option and drag this out. And now at 10%, I would just give this 10. I would select the first one. And instead of having purple, which is the 90, I would go with purple 60. So I'm going to fast forward that all the way to 100%. Step 37. So I went ahead and I fast forwarded. And as you can see, if we highlight all of them, it is working as expected and we have the text updated. It would be nice, instead of me going and creating a variant and renaming this one at a time, I could transfer all the properties from this variant all the way to here by simply copy pasting. And the answer is yes, you can do that. Instead of having the generic name of bar chart with percentage, what you can do is you can select all of the variants on the left hand side here. If I basically drag the layers out, you see it has a weird naming convention. What we need to do is exactly double click that, copy that, double click here and paste the rename here. So right now if I paste it, instead of my first element being the bar chart with percentage, it's actually being renamed identical to my variant on the left side. So all I have to do is basically select my variant on the left side, copy the name of the layer, select my auto layout on the right side and paste the values. And if I repeat that same steps all the way across, step 38. So I fast forwarded and I actually copy pasted the names all the way from the left variants to my layers here on the right side. And if you go ahead and take a look at the layers, it is not human readable. What we can do is use exactly the same approach and select all of our auto layout frame that is being renamed from our variants on the left hand side. Go ahead and create multiple components and then finally combine them as variants. And what you do notice is it automatically assigned everything identical to the components that we have on the left hand side. So you can use that as your automation. If you have again a variant set that you want to copy paste to another variant set and extend that, you can simply go ahead and copy the name of the layer and paste that on the right side and do a one-to-one mapping. This way you have exactly identical results but with extended functionality. So all we have to do is basically rename this to bar chart with percentage. Also, we would just give it a background color so we could see it more clearly. And now if I go ahead and try to drag this out, and if I try to zoom in to test it here, we see that we have 100%. If I do 60, not only the bar chart is being updated, the text is being updated as well. So far we managed to create again same variant in the 3 different versions. Step 39. So if I go ahead to my progress bar, instead of actually having it like that, I can select my bar chart Boolean and I can now click on the drop down, and then here Figma tells me the option that I have the Boolean component, the drop down component, and percentage. I'll go ahead and select the percentage, and if I take a look at my layer panel here, we see that we are using the bar chart with percentage value. That means I no longer need to use this content. I can simply use the drop down, delete the percentage from there. I'm making sure my content is no longer auto. I would just basically reset that back to 0, and I'll make sure instead of our category being fixed, I would select that and have that as fill. So this way our percentage is now being grouped with our bar chart and our category is not grouped with anything. So right now if we do a test, if we try to resize this, it is working as expected. And if I try to zoom in, go to the category, and if I try to start adding some characters, you see it is being resized accordingly. Also, what you do notice is our category, there's a bit of a space. So what we can do is go to the parent auto layout frame of the category, and instead of 150, we would just reduce that a little bit. So in this example, we would go ahead and use 90 pixels. So right now we have our progress created. We would cut that using Command and X, and we would visit our page, which is the component page, which we have our bar chart, Boolean, and percentage, and we would just right click, paste that there. Step 40. So we have all of our components in one single page, which is called components page. And right now we would turn this into its own component by clicking on the component icon. So what we can do is hold Option and drag this out, cut that, go to the demo, paste that here so we have an instance to work with. And now you can see as soon as we select the instance, we don't have the ability to do anything with it. So we can click this tiny icon to go to the main component, which is on the component page that we created, and start adding properties. The first property we want to add is a text property. So if I go ahead and select the category, not the parent auto layout frame, but the actual text category, I can scroll down under typography section and add a text property. So in this example, I would just rename this to category, and for the value, I would just rename this to default for now. As soon as I create that, if I go back to the demo page, as soon as I have my instance selected, if I scroll up, I have the ability to modify the category. For example, my Figma skills is 40%. If I hold Option and duplicate that, my HTML skills might be a different value. However, what you notice is once we select that, we have the ability to modify the category, but we don't have the ability to update the percentage. Step 41, we're stuck with 40% and 40%. So what we can do is we can click again to this tiny icon to go to the master component, which is progress bar. And we can hover over the properties, and as soon as we hover over that properties, we click plus, we have something called expose nested instances. I already covered expose nested instances in the component properties video, so if you want to learn more about it, you can definitely watch that video. But for now, we would just select expose nested instances and we would enable bar chart with percentage. And as soon as we do that, If I close that and go back to demo, right now we see that our instance has the ability to filter, and you see that there is a tiny drop down icon, which means that every time we select our instance, we have the ability to toggle between the nested components. So for Figma, we can do like 80%. We're good 80% using Figma. For HTML, maybe we're only good 10%. And this is how we created our progress bar. So now it's time for us to group them. So we can select both of them and do Shift and A to create an auto layout. And then here we would just rename this to column. And right now we would select our HTML, Command D multiple times to create our progress bar. So here I would just rename these categories, for example, to CSS 50%, and then JavaScript 90%. Then for example, VS Code, we would do 100%. Step 42. So if you're happy with this, what we can do to improve this, we can go and add round corners to our progress bar by simply going to the components. Here you see we have our progress created. Again, you have to make sure to select all the variants on your bar chart. Press return on your keyboard to select all of them. Use tab to navigate between your children elements, and you can select the bar chart. And under appearance, you can basically give your radius like 500. And once you give your corner radius 500, you have to make sure to enable clip content. By doing that, you are clipping your progress bar. So now if I go ahead and select my demo, here you see my progress bar is actually being rounded. We can actually move them using our arrow on our keyboard. So here we can organize them by the highest to the lowest. Also, what we do notice is there is not enough space between each of them. So we can go ahead and visit the components. Here we have that progress. If I click on that and scroll down, we only gave it 8 pixels in all direction. So we can hold command, click on that padding and just give it 16. So it's added 16 pixels on left and right and top and bottom. So now if I go back to my demo page, you see my progress bar has more space. Step 43. Finally, I can just, instead of column, I can rename this to card and drag this out. So we have, again, different colors to work with. So for the top one, we can have our card being light, and the bottom one, we can have it as dark. And the way it works is we have to go to our component. Because we created our progress, we have to make sure to add another variant. So here the progress is created, so I can click on that and go ahead and click on that tiny icon. You see it says add variant. As soon as I do that, I now added my second variant, and now it tells me what do you want your second variant to be. At first, I need to select my progress. I'm making sure on the property one, I double click that and renaming this to light. And as soon as I do that, I need to give one of them true and the other one false. So the first one for the light, I would just give it true, and the second one for the light, I'll give it false. And since the second one is set to false, I now need to revert the colors so I have a dark theme to work with. Step 44. So I can click outside, and if I take a look at the color styles that I have on the right hand side, I have light, purple, and background. I need to select my second one, scroll down. The first color I need to work with is a light background 100%. So I need to change it to dark background and a different color. So for the fill, I would just hover over that, detach the style, and then I would click on that panel, and I will make sure to use the eyedrop and select the main color. For my background color, I'm making sure on the HSL side, I would reduce the saturation to 40%, and I would reduce again the lightness to 15%. So once I'm happy with this, I can click on that 4 dots and go ahead and add that to my library using plus. And I have to make sure again, it is not under variables, it is under styles. So I'll go ahead and rename this to dark/background/15%. So I'll create that style, and Figma automatically linked that for me. So as you can see, we managed to create the light color structure. Now we are creating our dark background color. So all I have to do is select that, scroll down, and instead of having this as light purple 60, I would detach that and change the color values. So I would just go ahead and zoom in to see how it looks like. So I'll make sure that I increase the saturation to 100%. Also, I would increase the lightness maybe to 70%, which is a bit lighter than the top one. And once I'm happy with this color, I would click again on the 4 dots, plus, and I would select the styles, and then I would just rename this to dark purple and then 70%, and then create that. And then finally we have light purple 90%. So I would go ahead and detach that, select that, and I would make sure I select a dark background. So I'll use the eyedropper, select the background color, and as you can see, it is hidden now. So all I have to do is just increase the lightness a little bit. So instead of 50, we can go to 40, for example. Now you can see that the progress bar is being updated, and I have to create another style out of that. So I went ahead and renamed it to dark purple 40. And then finally we have the text color. I forgot to actually add the text color to the color styles. So what I can do is I can select the text color on the fill, repeat the same. So I went ahead and I renamed it to light text 30. And for the bottom one, I would just select that. Instead of having this as light 30%, I would just increase that to 100% white. And then I would just rename this to dark text 100%. So as you can see, we have our light colors, which is purple background with the text color. And we have our dark colors, which is again a background color, a purple and a text. Instead of purple, since we added these colors, now we can actually go ahead and tweak them. For example, if the contrast is not enough on the dark, instead of 70, you can just simply click that, modify that, for example, to 80%. And as you can see, it is a bit lighter and it has more contrast. And as soon as you make the modifications, you can go ahead and update that. And by doing that, if I click on my component, you see now the name and the colors are all being updated as well. You can see that once you select the selection colors, as soon as we have our dark component, the selection colors are all coming from the dark folder. If I go ahead and select the white one, all the selections are coming from the light color folder. And now if I go ahead and select my master component, as you can see, we have our light. If I select the first one, we set it to true. If I select the second one, the light version, we set it to false, which means we have to go to the demo, select our second card, use return on our keyboard to select everything, and then we have this toggle. So as soon as I turn this off, now we have our dark version created for us. Step 45. As you can see, even though we managed to switch the colors correctly, the percentage bar is not being displayed correctly as we switch to the dark mode. This issue can be resolved if you're using variables, but for the purpose of this video, we are not going to use variables at all. We want to assume that everyone's using a free version. So let's just go ahead in the components. And if we take a look at the right side here, we see we only are displaying 11 variants and it's only a light version. So in order for us to expand that, we have to basically move the progress to the right side, also expand that a little bit and select all the variants, which is 11 at the moment, hold option and duplicate them, and then basically releasing them. Step 46. As soon as you release them, make sure not to touch any of the variant properties because we do want to have them identical. We just want to add additional variant, which means we need to click on the master one, go to the properties, add another variant, and then just rename this to light. And here we see that our variant light is added. So we would just click and drag this to the top. And now we need to make this dark and give it true. So let's just go ahead, select all of them, scroll down to the fill section. Here it is using light purple 60. So we just need to search dark version of it. And the closest one is the dark 80. And also for the light purple 90, we need to search for the dark version and we are going to use the 40. So right now you see that we managed to flip the colors. All we have to do is select it one more time, go all the way up to the variant section. Since we added a new variant property, we need to make sure that the light for this one is set to false and the light version for this one is set to true. Step 47. By doing that, we have in total 22 variants. If I select all of them on the left side, if I scroll up, all of them are set to true with different variants in terms of percentage. And if I select all the 11s on the right side, they're all set to false on the light version and they all have different percentage values. Which means now if I go ahead and select my progress, I have it as light, which is again the first one is as light, which is true. The second one, however, if I select the middle one, the bar chart with percentage, it is not being displayed correctly. So what I need to do is simply delete that, click on the variant which is set as light true, and then here we see that plus icon, so I can add another variant, drag it out. In terms of the light value, I would rename this to false because I do want to have this as dark version. And as soon as I rename this to false, all I have to do is select the new bar chart with percentage and make sure the light is set off. Previously we didn't have this new property, so as soon as we turn this off, now I can simply go and select the parent auto layout and just switch the colors from light to dark, which is 15, and also from text all the way to 100%. So now if I visit the demo page here, we managed to switch them, and as you can see, the switching was off. So if I go ahead and delete that, hold option and try to drag it one more time, press return on my keyboard, now I can safely switch this from light to dark, and you see the values are all preserved, the colors are all changed correctly, and the bar chart is being displayed correctly as well. Step 48. Since we successfully managed to create a dark and light version of our progress bar using a purple color, as you can see on the right hand side, we actually categorize them based on purple, background, and text. What we can do right now is actually reorganize this and try to add different themes, as well as preserving the light and dark version. So for the light version, we are not going to change the text color and the background color. However, for the dark version, we do want to change the color of the background. So instead of having background under the dark, what we can do is click and drag this under purple, because the background color for the dark version is going to be changed according to the theme that we choose. But the background color and the text for the light version is not going to change, it's always going to stay light. So right now, if I collapse everything, on the light we have purple background and text, and under dark we have purple and text. Text is going to always be the same. However, under purple we have the foreground and background color, and then we have two colors and an additional background color. If you don't want to nest them, you can simply click and drag this out. This way you keep everything under one folder. So if I go ahead and visit my components, now I need to expand this again one more time. Here I have my bar charts, and I would just simply drag them, and then I would just zoom in here, select all of them, which is 22 variants, hold Alt and drag them out, and I'm going to leave them as is. And right now we want to use another color. In this example, this is going to be the dark version of our colors, and this is going to be light version, and the bottom half is going to be a different color. Let me add a bit of a space so we understand the actual variants. So here I would just drag it a little bit more so we understand that these are the bottom colors. There we go. Now what we need to do is, let's say we want to use color. We would navigate to the properties, add the plus, add another variant. Let's just go ahead and type purple, and then we can click and drag this all the way to the top. And as you can see, the 22 variables up top, which are being purple, we can select them and then give this as true. And the 22 variables at the bottom, we are going to recolor them. So we would make sure that the purple is selected as false. Step 49. So now it's time for us to recolor it. So in order for us to test one out, I would just click and drag this one out holding Option, and I would try to scroll down. Here we have the colors selected for us, and instead of 60, I would just detach that, and then I'll make sure to go with blue, for example, instead of green. So let's just go ahead and choose 210. And as soon as I do that, you see that the color is changed because we were using HSL colors. Also, I would go ahead and detach the other one and select that, switch that to 210, and I'm happy with the colors. So I need to add these to the color styles using the naming convention that I provided. So if I click outside here, you see that we have light purple, 60 and 90. We would exactly repeat the same, which means we would scroll down, click on this, click plus, go to the style, and then just type light/blue/60. And for the second one, we would just write light blue 90 and then create the styles. And for the dark version, let me just go ahead and drag one out. In this example, I'll drag the other one. Here we have 80 and 40. So we would detach that, change that to 210 on the hue, also change that to 210 on the hue as well, and repeat the same process. And instead of actually having this as light version, we would just rename this to dark. So it would be dark/blue/80, create the style, and then dark blue 40, create the style as well. So we're happy with the colors. All we need to do is basically apply that to these. And if I take a look at the right side, we see that a new folder is created for us, which is blue, and we added these two colors. So let's just go ahead and delete these sample ones. And for the dark version, I would scroll all the way up, making sure that it is purple set to false and light set to false. And now I would scroll down and make sure I select dark blue 80 and also dark blue 40. So here I would just go and search for dark and then blue. Here I would select 80 and then dark blue, and I would select 40. There we go. And now for the other one, I would make sure to filter by light blue and then select 60 and then also light blue and select the 90. Now if I go ahead and try to test this here on the instance, we can scroll all the way up. Now we have another property which is called purple. Here we have purple. We can actually toggle this between purple and blue, and we have light and dark, which we can toggle between light purple or blue purple. So we're happy with this. That means we can actually toggle between light and dark theme and between also blue and purple theme. Finally, we have to go to the progress and add 4 more properties. Again, we would click on the progress, drag it out, select these two, click plus to add 2 more variants. Here I would just try to drag them out. And the only additional color that we need to add is the purple. So here under the background purple, we would just detach that and choose 210 for blue. And then once we choose 210 for blue, we would add that to our library, which is dark blue 15, and then create the style. Again, if I close that, we don't want to change the background color and the text color for the light version. We only want to change it for the dark version. Now all I have to do is basically zoom in, select the bar chart percentage, go all the way up, making sure that the purple is off, and the light is off because we're using the dark version of blue. And for the top one, I would select that, making sure the purple is off. However, the light version is on because we want to use the light version of blue. Now I'm happy with this. All I have to do is now go to the progress, add another property, which is called purple. So here, variant, I would rename this to purple, and I would click and drag it to the top, and I have to make sure I select both of the purples and give them the value of true, select both of the blues and give them the value of false. Also, if I click on my progress, I notice that my light version has 4 values and that is incorrect. I have to make sure I fix that as well. So if I click on the first one, the light version is true, which is correct. If I click on the second one, the light version is false. That is correct. Now I need to click on my blue, and I see that the light is set to a different value. So all I have to do is making sure I set it to true because we're using a light version of the blue. And I will click on the other one, which is dark. So I'll make sure that the light version is set to false. So by doing that, if I now click on my progress, it is working as expected. Now if I go to my demo, if I zoom out, try to duplicate these all the way to the other side. Now if I press return on my keyboard, all I have to do is turn off purple. If I do that, there we go. I have now a blue theme created. Not only I preserved the value, I managed to create multiple themes, which means I managed to create a dark and light version theme on 2 colors, which is the purple color and the blue color. Also, if I hover over all of this, they are being responsive as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more design tips and tutorials, and let me know what you think in the comments down below.